This is your Thursday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. We've got a lot to get to today. Plenty going on in local sports right now and beyond. Be joined in a little bit by NFL super agent Leigh Steinberg. Had a chance to chat with him the other day on a number of subjects, including Aaron Rodgers, including the league's COVID plan, including kind of the evolution of the game, the NFL game, because he's got a lot of clients in the NFL, and we'll clear up whether or not he was in fact the inspiration for the movie Jerry Maguire. We'll talk a little bit of Vikings at the end of the show. A lot going on there as they get ready to go out west to play the Chargers. But first, what did I miss? Going to spend a good chunk of time at the beginning of the show on the Wild and the Timberwolves. Two teams, remember at the beginning of this year, really, which isn't that long ago, the seasons for these teams have only been going for, about a month, a little bit less than that. Remember how you maybe were excited about both of these teams, about how you thought, the Wild coming off of a playoff season, coming off of, Kirill Kaprizov's arrival. You thought, wow, I'm excited about this team. I think they have a certain kind of chemistry, a certain kind of mix going on this team that I like. And remember thinking about the Timberwolves. Wow, they played better towards the end of last season. In the off season, they get a year older. They have a whole off season to kind of get together and actually practice, as opposed to the year before. So you're thinking this could be a pretty fun winter for both of these teams. And Wednesday showed just how much this is kind of an opposite day scenario for these two teams. The Wild, as hot as can be right now, won again, beat Arizona, a team they absolutely should beat. Arizona's bad, very bad. They've only won one game all season, but you know what? You know what you do with bad teams? You jump on them, and you don't let off. Kevin Fiala had an impressive goal, batted it out of midair, 5-2 win. Fiala after the game, quote, "We're buzzing. I feel like every night we always step on the gas. We never break." That is the sign of a good team, of a team playing with confidence, of a team that knows it is good. Wild now 9-3 on the season, and just really figuring out how to win, in all scenarios, how to win. I think they've won some nights where they weren't at their best, and certainly taking care of business when they have inferior opponents, winning road games, things like that. Last night was a road game. Kaprizov is going now, Fiala going now. They got a nice start from backup goalie Kaapo Kähkönen. So this is a team that has justified your excitement so far at 9-3. Certainly looking like a team worthy of following for, the rest of the season, and thinking, wow, could this be a team that has some potential once they get to the playoffs? At least that's the way it looked right now. Fiala, another quote from him, by the way, want to share this one with you. We feel great about ourselves, but we can't chill. We always have to keep going. It's still early. You can't tell how good we are right now. We respect everybody else, every team, but we respect also ourselves. We're a great team. We just have to keep going. That would be good advice for the Timberwolves to have taken about 6 games ago. After they beat the Bucks to go 3-1, everybody was pretty excited. They'd beaten the defending champions on their home court, and then I think they got complacent after that. Either that or this team isn't very good, maybe a little bit of both. They are now 3-7 after losing to the Warriors on Wednesday night. No real shame in losing to the Warriors. Warriors are off to an extremely hot start. They are 10-1 this season. So, if you're going to lose a game, it's not surprising you lose that game for sure. That said, they've dropped a lot of them along the way, and the way they're playing is an indicator of just how much they're struggling right now. Chris Finch, head coach, after the game, lamented a few things, one of them being the transition defense early on.
Some turnovers for sure. I think guys going to the basket, not getting a foul call, a little frustrated. There was a lag in getting back. They were switching a lot of things, so there was some cross matches. So it was a gang of things, but we were better in that second half.
That was spot on. If you watch the game, that game got away from the Wolves in the second quarter. All of a sudden, they were down 20. They did cut it to, I think, 4 points in the second half, but it was inevitable. It felt like the Golden State, once crunch time hit, was going to take that game over, even with Anthony Edwards scoring 48 points for the Timberwolves. He had more points than any of the rest of their starters combined in that game. And I didn't like afterwards, by the way, Chris Finch kind of joining the complaint parade, complaining that Karl Anthony Towns isn't getting any fouls called. Now, he did not shoot a free throw in that game. That's got to be frustrating. But when you can constantly complain about not shooting free throws every night, when you constantly complain to officials, that is going to happen. Here was Finch post-game talking about the frustration level over that.
I don't know. I mean, every night I look at this and he doesn't get to the free throw line. Like every night, I don't know what to say. He's got to finish. He's got to be strong. He's got to go quick. He's got to, I thought he battled, man, offensive rebounds. Guys draped on him and he's trying to put it back up there and just couldn't get one to go in. Frustrating night for him, but he kept playing hard.
Now listen, what I see here is a team that is really struggling right now to find an identity. When they get into crunch time, like we've talked about, they are one of the worst teams in the NBA in net rating in the fourth quarter, one of the worst teams in the NBA in net rating during crunch time of games. I see a team that's lacking confidence, and frankly, I see a team that we're starting to see the real flaws in how it was constructed, and that's primarily on the man who's not here anymore, Gerson Rosas, who was fired not long before the season started, not so much for basketball matters, but for off-court matters. But he put together a roster that still has glaring holes. They talked all offseason about needing to upgrade their power forward position. They did very little to do that, and it is absolutely killing them right now. They are dead last still in the NBA in rebound rate, defensive rebound rate, 65.5%. Nobody else is worse than 69.2%. Wolves way down in that category. When you can't get defensive rebounds, possessions get extended, and it's just a demoralizing way to play. So a failure to acquire any sort of meaningful upgrade at power forward is absolutely hurting them right now. The Ricky Rubio trade does not look great right now. Still like the Patrick Beverley move, but that's just not enough on its own. If you look at their bench right now, you thought maybe they had some depth this year. If Malik Beasley isn't scoring, their bench is terrible. I mean, I like Naz Reid. I think he does some good things. Maybe that's the next thing you try in the starting lineup, two bigs with Naz Reid and Karl Anthony Towns next to each other. Maybe try Towns as more of a 4 in certain scenarios. But right now, the roster doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense. They're 3-7, 6 straight losses. By the way, 2 of their wins to start the year against the Rockets and the Pelicans. The Rockets and Pelicans each have 1 win this season. And by the way, that Pelicans win was against the Wolves right after the Wolves beat the Pelicans. That Milwaukee win is their only impressive win this year. They've lost to the Pelicans. They've lost to the awful Orlando Magic. They've given some other games away that they probably should have won. This is a team that if you were excited about them, I don't know outside of Anthony Edwards what there is to be excited about right now, and I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Happy to have NFL agent Leigh Steinberg on Daily Delivery today. Leigh, how you doing?
Doing just great, thank you.
Appreciate you doing this. Now, you're someone who represents you, got in touch with me last week after the Aaron Rodgers story broke when it was learned that he was going to be out with COVID. I thought, yeah, that might be a 1 or 2 day story. It's turned into a many days story. Maybe you can just start, Leigh, with talking a little bit about the impact that we're seeing of COVID-19 still on this season. Obviously, with Rodgers missing a game here in Minneapolis, we're seeing the Vikings impacted by it with several players missing time, and in fact, Dakota Dozier, one of their offensive linemen, being hospitalized as a result of getting COVID-19. Maybe from your perspective, what's the ongoing impact that you see?
Well, the truth of the matter is the NFL has done an excellent job in putting together protocols and systems that have resulted in very few players missing time, no games postponed. We have live fans in the stands, and the protocols work pretty well, so that we have a really exciting football season going on, and packed stadiums and players who are participating. So compare this, for example, to last year, where there were no fans in the stands certain places, where players opted out of the whole season. It was really impactful. But this year's been much more normal.
I agree with that. It's also been interesting to see I think the conversation over COVID has shifted more to conversation over players being vaccinated or not vaccinated, and that became a big part of the Aaron Rodgers story. As someone who represents and has represented so many high-profile players, how does that play out in terms of just players' rights versus the concept of what a team might want and things of that nature?
So, first of all, let's be clear. The protocols and the COVID policy was collectively bargained between the Players Association and the owners, so that everyone agreed that this was the best set of protocols possible to allow as normal a season as could be. And no one's telling players they have to be vaccinated. No one's forcing players to take the vaccine or wear a mask or do anything. What they're saying is that if you're vaccinated, you follow one set of protocols, and if you're not vaccinated, then you have to wear a mask at the facility, you get tested multiple times, and all the rest. And so the system's worked really well. It has nothing to do with woke or cancel culture. It has nothing to do with, the major politics of the thing. You just have players in these two categories. So the easiest thing for a player to do is get vaccinated. But if they have real objections or they've got some problems, okay, you put them in category 2. And then for the protection of other players and to create a situation where you're not having mass infections, they ask them to wear a mask inside the complex, to when they go out in public to wear masks. And these are just standard rules for everybody. And the fact that someone got tested positive, again, all the policy is written down and made real clear for everybody to know. So it doesn't have anything to do with sort of the larger issues. It's a safety system that is divorced from the rhetoric and the anger going on in the rest of the society, to simply give fans and players the best chance to enjoy the season.
I would agree with that. I don't necessarily expect you to comment directly on players you don't represent, but it feels like Aaron Rodgers has taken a certain hit to his reputation throughout this process, and in my estimation, rightfully so. I believe he intentionally misled, at the very least, with how he answered that question about whether he was vaccinated in August. That said, players, as someone who represents so many players, you can give them a certain amount of advice. How often does a player stick to the script? How often does a player just kind of go off and say and believe whatever they're going to believe?
Well, first of all, the problem with anything related to COVID and masks and vaccinations has been that the feelings are so intense and so strong on either side of the equation that it's like the third rail of public interest, and it's an area that you would really like your players to stay away from, other than potentially urging people to get vaccinated. But so you'd like that. There's a credibility issue here, which is that this is not yesterday's press corps. In days past, 30, 40 years ago, writers used to travel on the team plane. They got all sorts of gifts or a very cozy relationship. Today's press does careful checking and careful scrutiny and evaluates the consistency of statements. Roger Goodell learned that in the Ray Rice situation. So here you've got a situation where it's not like people forgot what the player had said originally. And so now you have a credibility issue. So people are going to react the way they do. To some people, I'm sure that this player will be a hero because he fought against the system and stood up for his own rights. It's just what your perspective is on the issue.
You mentioned the differing media landscape. You've been at this for quite some time, and maybe without you, this would probably be a subject for a book and not a couple minutes of a podcast segment. But as you think about how player interaction dynamics have changed during, as you've represented them, what sticks out to you as some of the bigger changes that you've seen, whether it's league dynamics, player dynamics, how you deal with players, things like that?
Well, the first big change has been the evolution of social media. So the fact of the matter is that players now on their own can go ahead and tweet or TikTok or Instagram and express themselves publicly. So they don't really have as much of a need. They don't think they have as much of a need to deal with contemporary press, but that's wrong because we wouldn't even know there was a football season going on if you weren't reading about it in a newspaper or on the internet. And so there's really a synergistic relationship, but this has been a major change. And you also have the universality of the internet, which means that a player used to give a quote or say something in one regional or local market, and that's as far as it went. Now everything has a instant propulsion to be a worldwide story. So that's a basic change also. And you also have in football the popularity of the game, which was when I was growing up, it was baseball. And now by 3-1, NFL football is the most popular sport in various reader polls. And the games are the most heavily watched form of entertainment. They lead the Nielsen ratings week after week. 71 of the top 100 shows last year on television were NFL games or pregame broadcasts. So you've got this dominance of one sport in the culture, and it means there's a microscope. You also have the evolution of whole pages and whole press presentations that are based on athletic behavior off the field, so that every drunk driving, every domestic violence is portrayed as if it somehow represents the daily activity of a good deal of players, which it doesn't. It's the aberration. But the point is that everything is fair game now. And, when Babe Ruth walked up the middle of a train carrying him from one city to another with a woman under his arm drunk, on the day of the game, no one wrote it. But now we write every personal detail about every athlete. So it requires cautioning them that they live under a microscope, that the minute they leave the house in the morning until they come home, their behavior has to be circumspect.
It sounds like that would make your job more challenging. Am I getting the gist of that?
Clearly more challenging because, again, it requires all sorts of preparation. So we need to talk through with players under what circumstances they're going to be drinking in public and how they're going to get home, and to have a plan before they leave so that we eliminate drunk driving, to understand if they go out in public, someone may challenge them and we don't want to have fights, to understand that every interaction with a female for a male athlete, again, is something that they'll be judged on. So it requires a lot of preparation, and they get this before. When we have rookies, we give them this kind of preparation, but they also get it from, in football, the NFLPA. They get it from the league itself. So there's a whole system set up of where if a player happened to be out and he had been drinking, if he could remember, he can call Uber, which the league pays for, or the Players Association pays for.
Enjoying this conversation with NFL agent Leigh Steinberg. A couple more things for you, Leigh. You mentioned just how popular the NFL is. I don't think anybody would doubt that. There's been so many, threats, I guess, to that reputation in recent years. You had, concussion discussion, which is still very much mainstream. There's been a lot of different issues that seem to threaten it, yet it still stays in that dominant top spot. What has made you think the NFL so resilient in that regard that it still is, number one by a large margin in our country?
First of all, it grew up with the development of television. So all the camera angles, the superimposed first down line, there are so many aspects of football that televise well, and they got all the benefit of that. It's an event game, so it's not 162 games. It's now 17, or with preseason 20 games. So every week is a new event and can be built up prior to it and coming out of it. So there's the lead up into the game, and then it comes out. And every game counts and matters. It reflects the desire of people to watch more physical contact. And so, it's got action, it's got content, it has short bursts of action that fit sort of a fractionalized focus that people have today. They're unlike soccer. There are commercials. People can go to the bathroom, and then it's developed a variety of ways to enjoy it, from fantasy football that engages people to gambling that engages people. Its memorabilia and collectibles are designed with great flair, and they're things that people want to have. And for people who didn't go to college or people who did, it has rivalries, which are one city versus the next, like Cleveland and Cincinnati, and reflects area pride in all of it. So there's so many ways in which this sport is the sport. We're now seeing virtual reality where Patrick Mahomes you put on the helmet and you can be him in a game. There are other iterations where there's a new league where fans get to pick the coaches and the general managers. It's been one of the cleverest marketing campaigns. They were the first with an NFL network exclusively focused on their sport. It's been very clever extensions of the brands into different ways. And now you've got gambling come on, and I don't think it'll be too long till it'll be pari-mutuel at the stadia themselves. So it's been the cleverest and most creative in marketing and giving all fans a rooting interest. One other key is that the major portion of the games are not on pay television. So that if you have $112 and you can buy a black and white or a little colored TV, you can watch the games. The Super Bowl, the main event, is not on pay-per-view. So that's occasioned massive regularity. Here in Los Angeles, we couldn't even watch the Lakers or the Dodgers unless you were on a certain cable system. So they've made sure that it's accessible to everyone.
Good stuff, Leigh. Last question for you. I've seen this a lot of different places. I've wondered this, and in fact, it is in the first paragraph of your Wikipedia entry. Steinberg is often credited as the real-life inspiration of the sports agent from Cameron Crowe's film Jerry Maguire in 1996. Upsetting that movie is 25 years old, but I got to ask, is that accurate, Leigh Steinberg?
So Cameron Crowe called me up in 1993, and he was a writer-director, and asked if he could follow me and be a fly on the wall or do research into a film that would feature a sports agent. So he went with me in 93 to the league meetings where I was showing off a free agent named Tim McDonald. And, at times I'd introduce him to people in that world, but I always told him stories. And then we went to the NFL draft in 93 where Drew Bledsoe was the first pick in the first round, and you got to watch and see all that. And then we went up to New England, to Boston for the initial press conference with Drew and Bill Parcells. He came to Pro Scouting Day at USC. He came to a series of games with me. He came to my 2 Super Bowl parties. Spent lots of time in my office. So and then he went off and wrote a script, and I was technical advisor, so it was my job to vet the script to make sure the willing suspension of disbelief, which holds you in a motion picture, so you didn't think the dialogue was phony or the look on the field was phony, was preserved. And then I worked with some of the actors, Cuba Gooding Jr., who played Rod Tidwell. I took to Arizona, and he had to pretend he was a wide receiver, my client, all week, and he interacted with Desmond Howard and Amani Toomer. And so there's a lot of life up there on the screen, and I frankly haven't been out too many times in public, either in an airport or out to dinner, where someone didn't run up to the table and either ask me to say the 4 words or say the 4 words to me that start with "show me the."
Show me the money. That's it. Well, I love that answer. It sounds like that was a long way of saying yes, I think, but I like the detail in that, Leigh. Great stuff. Good catching up with you, and best of luck as this game continues to evolve. I think that gambling piece you mentioned is going to be kind of the next big thing here in sports, and it's just fascinating for me to see how that has evolved in sports, especially the NFL. When 5 years ago they didn't want anything to do with it, at least not publicly.
And now this weekend I'm going to see Patrick Mahomes play in Las Vegas, which was never going to have a team because of gambling, and now has a hockey team and a football team. And you have teams owning parts of things like DraftKings.
Well, thanks, Leigh. I appreciate you taking the time on Daily Delivery. Be well, okay?
My pleasure.
Loved chatting with Leigh Steinberg. Just interesting perspectives on the NFL. He's been at this for 4 decades, you guys. Has a wealth of experience, has seen it all, and was really interesting to catch up with him. Let's finish with the cooler. Vikings going to the Chargers over the weekend, probably without a whole bunch of their best defensive players, and now facing a scary situation. Dakota Dozier, we reported in the Star Tribune, hospitalized with COVID symptoms. Mike Zimmer, said a player was hospitalized. The Star Tribune has reported that it was Dakota Dozier, guard, offensive lineman for the Vikings. So just We talked about this quite a bit on the Access Vikings podcast. You can find that where you get your finer podcasts as well. But not to lump all of these things together. The COVID very serious. The Dalvin Cook situation very serious. But feels like part of what we thought might happen at the beginning of the year when things were going off kilter in training camp. That it just feels like one of those years for the Vikings, and we'll see if somehow, some way, without a lot of their best defensive players, if they can change that narrative on Sunday. That will do it for today. Bunch of good stuff coming up on Friday's show. Talk to someone down in Iowa, enemy territory, advancing that Gophers Hawkeyes game Saturday in Iowa. Also have Mark Craig and his NFL picks. Thanks for joining me here on Daily Delivery today. I'm Michael Rand. We'll catch you again on Friday.